Good evening, Leroy Clamola. How are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to another edition of From the Pressbox here on this. At least here it is a kind of a chilly, rainy October Thursday evening here in Kentucky.
Here too, and I have to apologize. We're doing it on a Thursday night, not a Wednesday night. I was not feeling very good at all, and in fact, I kind of dipped early from work again today because I really was just not feeling the best. Just 24-hour, 36-hour bug, and as busy as we are, Sam, with football wrapping up, we're getting to the playoffs here relatively soon. It's one of the and getting ready for basketball season. It's one of those things where you kind of want to conserve your energy when you can, because you know what our schedule is like once we really start getting going, especially the beginning of basketball season.
Oh yeah, because that comes up here. Excuse me, really, really soon. And I mean a lot sooner than probably we even want to imagine. I know I'm checking on high school football games that really have no true interest to me. The only reason is because it's based on playoffs and everything, and we're getting into that. So I keep looking at my phone because there was a lightning delay like 2 hours ago, and I haven't heard anything else since. So I don't know if they're all like got struck by lightning and there no longer is either school. And what does that mean? Like, does that mean we get a bye? Like, I don't know what that means. But still, so on the show today, we'll obviously have all of our segments. Leroy has been rolling on Leroy's logos as of late. So I have it's another one of these this week, Leroy. I'll be honest that I'm not sure whether I think I'm right down the middle of a perfect Leroy's logo segment. So I'm not really sure. We'll see how you do.
Medium, one easy.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. Even it's just I think I got like 3 solid ones. So I'm not really sure. We'll check on that a little bit later on. We'll have our picks, play clock, drivers, everything else along with that. First off, we do want to recap our picks from last week. It wasn't a great week for either one of us, Leroy.
Yeah. I knew it. I checked into those scores and I was like, "Ooh, man, that was not good."
We had the opportunity, each of us. Oh, in fact, I was wondering why it didn't update. We both had the opportunity for up to 9 points. Leroy, you got 3 points. 3 out of 9. I got 5 out of 9. Not a great week. That does bring our totals to 47 for myself, 34 for you, Leroy. Your percentage, Leroy, is... Say that again?
We picked almost the same games. Does that mean I got the 2 wrong that I picked different from you?
Correct. Your percentage for the season, Leroy, is 49.28%. I'm at 68.12%. The games to recap: Grayson County played Seneca. Leroy, you went with Seneca, and it was Grayson County that won 16-6. Leroy, I picked Charleston against Taylorville, and I was very much correct in that, right?
In a rain-soaked Friday night football game, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. Taylorville kept up with them for the first quarter, and it was all Charleston after that.
We both went with Kentucky against Missouri. We were both very wrong there. We both went with Western Kentucky against Jacksonville State. We were both very wrong there. We both went with the Bengals. We were right there. We both, for some reason, I decided to pick the Bears. And why? It was one of those things is like later on, I was like, why did I do that? Like, I know better than that. And the Bears lost to the Vikings. We both picked South Carolina over Florida. We were both wrong on that. We both went with North Carolina. We were right there. We both went with the Raiders over the Patriots.
He's really good
on Oregon, Washington.
North Carolina's quarterback is really, really good.
Yeah, Drake May.
Yeah.
And we both picked, you picked Oregon, I picked Washington, and what was a great game. I ended up coming away with the dub, that one. So that brings us, not a great week for either one of us. So hopefully we can both come back, because this week we only have the opportunity for 8 points, because no Bengals and no Kentucky. So I have a very lazy weekend without either one of those.
What are you going to do with all your free time?
I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out. I'm going to have to get my red zone popped up and everything to watch along with that. But a couple of the topics that we wanted to talk about on the show was we're going to talk about the Caleb Williams saga, I guess might be the word to describe it. But first, Leroy, I got home from the Bengals. I went to the Bengals-Seahawks game, And it was weird because my friend that I usually go to the games with, his sister got married. So because of that, he couldn't go. And I had a couple people back out for the extra ticket. And finally, it got to be that I ended up just throwing it up on Ticketmaster like 2 hours before the game. And it was one of those that I quickly learned that I sold it for way cheaper because it sold in 2 minutes. So I was like, well, dang, I should have asked for a lot more money than that. But regardless, and then the weirdest part about it was that I sold this ticket. It was a single seat, and the person who bought it never came to the seat. So, I mean, not that I'm complaining, we got the money, but still, it was just kind of funny to me. But regardless, getting off topic, when I came back that night, you sent me a message that read something along the lines of, I almost got kicked out of a soccer game tonight. And I said to you, I don't want to hear anything else. Save it for the podcast. So, Leroy, how does one almost get... Was this a youth soccer game?
This was a JV soccer game. Leroy's hitting the big time.
How does one get kicked out of almost get kicked out of a JV soccer game?
Are you ready for this? I hope you're
ready. I've been waiting all week.
Okay, so is my connection good? Can you hear me? Everything fine? Okay.
Do I sound fine?
No,
or at least as fine as I'm going to get?
You sound great. Okay, so here's the deal. Alexis, my 11-year-old, is playing soccer, and she plays for the junior varsity team. Hello, Christy. Christy will love this story because she was sitting right behind me when it happened. And so you were just as bad as I would. Don't even start with me, woman. Anyway, so the referee for the JV soccer game is the high school coach. Okay? The referee for the JV game is the high school varsity soccer coach. The team that we're playing...
You're not helping yourself right now, Leroy.
I'm not trying to. The team that we were playing was very, very aggressive. And it felt like it was a bunch of 8th graders taking on a bunch of 6th graders. It wasn't. I mean, it was mixed classes, but it really felt just like they were just pushing our guys all around. And we were getting blown out. I mean, it was 2-0 before the first 45 seconds of the game. So I want to say it was 8-0. And their players were still being super aggressive. And he wasn't calling anything on the Hillsborough players for pushing our guys around. And he looks over and our coach said something. And I don't know what our coach said. But he looked over at our coach and was like, that's enough from you. And he looked at him and he kind of held his hand up. And the coach was like, I didn't say anything to you. I think the coach was talking to one of his players. But the ref heard it and was, saying a whole bunch of stuff about it. So Leroy, in all of his infinite wisdom, decided to yell and help out. And I said something to the effect of, hey, if they're going to grab you guys, grab them back. Apparently, they're not calling that at all. That's all I said. The problem with saying that is when there's only 25 to 50 people in the stands, everything can be heard. And he looked straight at me and he goes, and that's enough from you too. And he holds his hand up like that. And I thought in my head, and I thought, if the Taylorville broadcaster gets kicked out of a JV soccer game, how does that look? Probably not the best. But it was so bad, Sam. And I was quiet for the rest of the game. But Christy almost got into it with the soccer mom from Hillsborough. So she's just as guilty as I am.
I have a lot of questions. A lot of questions. First off, aren't you somebody that's done some officiating before? Quite a bit of it?
Yes. I've done quite a bit of officiating.
Didn't you even take college classes for officiating?
No. I took college classes for athletic coaching. I did not take college classes for officiating. Okay.
Is the parent you are being not the parent that you hate the most as the official?
Yes.
Is that not being 100% condescending in what you're saying?
I didn't want them touching my baby, man. I didn't want them pushing over my kid, man.
So you're being Papa Bear.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
I just want stuff called the same both ways.
Okay, let's
So
see what your wife has chimed in. She says, hey, she said there was only so much legal pushing, but not pushing. Well, she was making it out that it was okay for Hillsborough to push our players, but we couldn't do it back to them. And Josh Isles writes in and he
listen,
says, call it like it is. It's on you.
I wouldn't be talking about it if I wasn't prepared to accept the consequences from it. But in an 8-0 game, man, tell your kids to back off. You're already going to win the game. There was no sense in being.
Also, your wife's or your daughter's a retaliator here.
She's pretty feisty.
Listen,
they call them the Sassy Twins. Her and one other girl on the team.
The Sassy Twins. I just like there's so much, and for me, like I will never forget that we were doing a game, and it was a big game, like the varsity game, and they had the JV prior to it. And the JV game, I don't even remember if it was Grayson County winning or the other team, but it was not close. Like this JV game, it was probably 30 points. It wasn't close. I don't remember which side was winning. And one parent stood up and started yelling at the official. And the official just pointed at him and got ejected. And I just leaned over to one of our high school kids that works for us. I was like, what does it say about you that you get ejected from a JV game that is a 30-point game? Like what are we doing? What are we doing? That shouldn't be on the responsibility of the official to have the kids back off their aggressiveness and play if it's within the rules. No, I
wasn't mad at the official for their aggressiveness. I was mad at the coach for their aggressiveness and upset that it felt that it was very one-sided because they were calling everything on our side. It's almost like because he's the Taylorville soccer coach, that he was being extra against Taylorville and not against, because he didn't want to show bias. That's what it felt like. And again, I fully accept responsibility for it. I know that I was an a-hole about it. That's fine. I fully accept it. But it's just one of those things where, I don't know. I get irritated when it feels that it's like completely one-sided in a game that really was already decided in the first 5 minutes of the game. I was way more mad at the coach than I was at the referee.
Interesting. Well, I just wanted to make sure that I hear this story and give you the opportunity to
but that's the
say your piece.
Is and I thought about it, and it's just like, yeah, the broadcaster getting kicked out of a JV game. How many people know me here? Way more than should.
Yeah. Probably not a good moment. I know that we had a game. I think this was last year that it was a JV game, and there's one official, and I feel like in every group, in every officiating group, there is one who just takes himself a little bit too serious. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this guy is one of those guys that it is weird that from day to day you could joke with him, and then the next day you can't. Well, I did something, and okay, so
Sam made a joke on the day. Sam made a joke on the day he wasn't joking.
Yes. So what happened was one of the managers for the basketball team, for the boys basketball team, was working the clock during the JV game.
Yeah.
And this kid has a big personality. He's the class clown is kind of like the best way to describe this kid. And we're doing this, and it was late in the second quarter, going into halftime. And the kid who was doing clock for the first time screwed up. I don't even remember as to what exactly he did. He just accidentally let a couple of extra seconds run off the clock. And the official came over and scolded him. And I was just kind of whatever, it's JV, it's his first time. And I was just like, hey, Andy, you going to tee him up? Just joking with him. And he points at me and dead serious. He says, I'm going to tee you up. And I'm like, what did I do? I was like, I am clearly joking. Why would you tee up the 17-year-old kid in a JV game running the score because he let a couple of extra seconds run off the clock? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Man lives and breathes it. That's his livelihood.
And it was just kind of okay, well, now I know not to ever make a joke. Because there's a few officials that you can make that and be like, oh, yeah, ha. It's not like I'm telling massive jokes or anything, but still. We're getting off topic about our run-ins with high school officials, and how it goes along. Because the big topic we wanted to talk about
that brings up my total to almost 2, by the way.
Almost 2.
Almost.
The biggest topic we wanted to talk about today, though, is the Caleb Williams saga. Caleb Williams has been called by some college football experts and NFL experts as being a home run pick. That he would be the number 1 pick over the past 5 NFL drafts is pretty much what they said. They said that they were doing it, over Joe Burrow, over Trevor Lawrence, that he would go. Now, obviously, we could have that discussion another day, and pretty much Josh leads us into one aspect of it, because this is the topic of it, is that Caleb Williams has come out, allegedly, like, I don't know that we've ever heard this from his actual mouth, but he says that he wants to only play, or supposedly wants to play for, 5 teams?
Yes.
And he's making enough money in NIL that he would be willing to go back to USC if he thinks that if the Bears get the number 1 pick, the Bears are not on his list, that theoretically he would be willing to go back to college and do that.
And that's adorable, because I tell you what, and again, and I'm going to go back to the whole, we've never heard him actually say any of this. And with social media being what social media is, it would not shock me if things were being put out there that were maybe misconstrued, except for the fact that he hasn't come out and said, no, that's not what I meant. That's not this. That's not that.
Which is telling.
He hasn't said anything. He hasn't commented once. It's all been through his team, his spokespeople, his representatives. And it's interesting as you're going to start seeing the dynamic of the college drafts start to change. And I wonder if this is going to be starting to see kind of a power struggle, because Caleb Williams is saying that he's making more at the college level than he would as an entry-level NFL player. And if that's the case, and I don't necessarily know if that's true, if that's the case, the NCAA and the NFL have a serious problem on their hands.
Do they?
And we talked about this before, Sam, and you know my feelings on the NIL. You know my feelings about getting these sponsorships and getting all of this extra money. And I just, is the NFL the final dream now? I mean, yeah, he's going to say that he's going to wait, but guess what? Those teams that suck this year will most likely be the same teams that suck next year. You're not going to see too much different. I fully believe that we'll see the Bears and Broncos and maybe the Cardinals in the future as one of these things where they're going to be able to kind of use this as leverage. But how are they going to use it as leverage? I mean, the same teams that are going to be there are going to be there.
To me, for one, the NIL thing, let's just put it as fact in this way. It's not going anywhere, so we better get used to it.
Right. And again, that's not me yelling in a crowd against it. That's me saying I don't think we fully realize the ramifications of all that this presents for both college and the NFL. I think we're just starting to see the fingerprints on this moving forward.
I kind of agree with Josh, and I don't know that it hurts the NFL. For one, if we're being honest, I don't think anything can hurt the NFL. Like, I just think the NFL is too powerful, and it's not like Caleb Williams is a really good talent. Like, without question, he is a great talent. But I don't think he is it's not like if you took Caleb Williams and put him on the Bears today, that the Bears are winning the Super Bowl. That's the one thing with football is it's not like a LeBron, where LeBron can lift a team like that because he is just an elite player. Football is just such a different sport. Now, you have to be elite at that quarterback position. But I just, I mean, if we're just talking about the sheer him wanting to only play for 5 teams or whatever it is, I think the Cowboys were on the list, maybe the 49ers or so on.
The Vikings were on there, and the Vikings I could see, because the Vikings are probably going to have a lower or have a higher draft pick this year simply because they just haven't been very, very good.
But let's be real. There's a few teams that'll probably be in the running for the number 1 pick this year. the Chicago Bears, technically the Carolina Panthers, but that's the Chicago Bears, and the Arizona Cardinals are probably in that realm. Maybe the Giants would be in that realm as well. But I think the Giants still will be one of those teams that rattle off a couple of wins late and get like that 6th, 7th, 8th pick or something. But I think like the Denver in there as well. Denver can be a team that could 100% get up there and be in that number 1 pick territory. And is Caleb Williams really going to change those teams that much for them to put up with some of this stuff?
Well, and then you think about the game that he just absolutely bombed against Notre Dame, and it becomes one of those things where if he stays another year with USC and they're playing Big Ten teams next year, I mean, that competition is not going to get any easier next year if he stays one more year. And so you kind of wonder, as far as that goes, whether or not he wants to make the jump or whether or not he stays another year. But if he stays another year, does that hurt him? Because he didn't play well against Notre Dame.
I don't know that it'll hurt him. I think the only way it hurts him is if he gets hurt.
Right.
And that's the risk where you see it. And this is why all these guys have been opting out of bowl games, is because in a lot of realm, does it really do anything for you to play in the Music City Bowl?
No, nothing.
No, it doesn't. Like sure, you can put on for your team one more time, and I get that. Some guys are built that way, but it's also what happens if you go out there and you tear your ACL, and then you go from being a 1st round pick to a 3rd round pick, potentially, depending on what position it is.
Yeah.
And that's the risk that goes into it. And I really think this might all be a smokescreen. Like, I can't imagine.
Too. Like, you can't tell me that if the Bears were like, hey, we want to take you number 1, that he wouldn't be, because
that he'd pull an Eli.
Right. Like I just don't see it. What's the payout for a number 1 pick? It's a chunk of change. There's no question. Josh writes in and says, but at the level of player Caleb Williams is, he's already making NFL money, so maybe an injury isn't nearly the risk it once was considered. And that's not wrong. I think the one thing with the NFL that is the difference, though, is that the NFL is the guaranteed money. Where you can get some more of that guaranteed money in there for that draw. And I think Mick, it kind of leads right into my point here. Says that I think the main way it impacts the NFL is how the rookie contracts will be structured in the future. And I think that's where you're going to see it the most. Is kind of in the money aspect and how the NFL could potentially sway some of these guys. But in a lot of ways, how many Caleb Williams are going to come across that it makes more sense for them to not go to stay in college and get the NIL than to jump out? Yeah.
1 a year, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like Brock Bowers is one of the best players in the NFL in college football right now. Yes, he had the injury, but he's not making NIL money that are come close to be the consistent money that he can make in the NFL. Drake May, the quarterback at UNC, who you touched on a minute ago, and I know somebody left a comment as well. Could he potentially be the number 1 pick now because of all of this with Caleb Williams?
Yep.
Especially if a team like the Bears, who absolutely might need a quarterback.
Does a team jump on Williams with his supposed attitude and how he is? Now, again, this is all speculation. We haven't talked. As far as I know, Caleb Williams hasn't really done a whole lot of press conferences where he's talking all of this stuff about other teams. It's all come from his agents, which brings us to the second point that he was saying about ownership. Now, Aaron Rodgers, apparently, when he went to New York, had talked about trying to get into ownership, especially after he retires. Patrick Mahomes has also said the same thing, that he would like to see some type of ownership. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, Mahomes and like 4 other guys have gotten into ownership for a different sports team, or maybe I have to look at that. Mahomes got into ownership of somebody. Formula One. Yeah, he bought a F. He's looking at,
and he's also I think he's a part owner of the Kansas City soccer team as well. Right. I think is what it is that Mahomes is in there as well.
Mahomes is part owner of the Royals, Sporting Kansas City, which is the Major League Soccer team, the Kansas City Current, which is NWSL, and a pickleball team in Miami. Okay. But he also is trying to become part owner of the Alpine race team, which is in Formula One. So you're starting to see some of these players use their money and invest it in ownership ways. But for a college kid coming in, I don't know, man. That is
that's where it is. I think you just mentioned two quarterbacks who have earned the right to do that. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. So he absolutely does it. These athletes love investing in pickleball teams. We could have a nice conversation about pickleball. In fact, they just announced today that they're building pickleball courts here in Litchfield. People are losing their mind over it because you had one person that was mad that they didn't build an Arby's instead.
But the thing is we heard for years that NFL players were really bad with money. I think there was some stat, and I could be wrong, that showed like up to 47% of NFL players go bankrupt after like 10 years being out of the NFL. And it's nice to see them really, at least some of these guys, really start to get into ownership type situations where it's really hard as an owner to lose money. A lot of those, I mean, think about it. Think about how much value teams grow every single year. I mean, even women's hockey or WNBA with connection with the NBA. It's one of those things where there's no downfall to owning a team, at least not too much. So could this potentially be something where we see a lot more players start to get involved in ownership? You know, you look at Michael Jordan and what he did with the Bobcats. Obviously, he didn't do very well as the GM, but it's one of those things where it's interesting to see the direction that this stuff is starting to go.
Yeah, and I think like with the Caleb Williams thing, I think, you know, every NFL team's going to laugh at him with that. Like, you have not earned the right. And really the question is even as a guy like, you know, Joe Burrow, like on your first, how many contracts does it take for you to truly earn that right to have an opportunity to do something like that?
Yeah.
And I don't really know that I know the answer to that, but I think it will be interesting to see because I think you will see guys like Burrow, guys like Mahomes in the future, these elite quarterbacks that teams are building around, potentially work some of that in. And it'll be interesting to see how much of these owners will be willing to give that. Because I think that's the biggest thing, too, is that these owners are, like a lot of them are, you know, greedy. They only care about their money and so on. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how that aspect goes along as well.
Yeah. And I tell you what, with teams becoming more and more expensive, with the value going up for all of these teams, you're not going to see, I don't think you're going to, the days of one person or two or three people owning a team is going to go away. It's going to start becoming like 6 or 7 guys that are going to start owning these teams as the value keeps skyrocketing for these franchises. I mean, you think about how much value the Cincinnati Bengals are and how much the Bengals are worth, or a team like the Patriots, you know, teams that have been around for a long period of time. And I mean, even the Chicago Bears, I mean, when you look at like how much $6 billion is what they value the NFL, the Chicago Bears franchise at. $6 billion. I mean, that's no drop in the hat right there.
Yeah, no, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how things like that will continue to evolve. And like Mick brought up, the point is, does the NFL change how they structure the rookie deals, and how do they do that? Because, you know, you get some of these first-round quarterbacks, you know, and if we're being honest, more times than not, first-round quarterbacks don't turn out to be what you think they're going to be.
Yep.
Yep.
What's my motive to go to the NFL if college is paying me all this money?
I mean, let's be honest. Justin Fields, he's a great example. And this is not me crapping on the Bears by any means, but it's just fact. Justin Fields is what, like the 15th pick, 14th, something like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, mid first round. Yep. If it like does, to what point does he deserve? You know, or is it just quarterbacks that would get, you know, if we're going to do stuff on ownership and so on?
He was 11th.
11th. Okay. I knew he was in that 10 to 16 range or something along the lines of that. John writes in, I hope he ends up in Green Bay as a rookie, and it shuts the whole ownership thing down. Well, that is a good point.
That is
Team like
true.
Green Bay can't stay in college forever, only delays them to the NFL a year or two at most. And that's the truth. It's like, let's say that
but then
the
you
Bears
don't get to pick. You don't get to pick where you go, right? Like
No.
that's the struggle you run in, which is why I laugh every single time I see. Oh, I'm only going to play for this team and this team. Whereas
we get
the other guy like Deion Sanders, who the Giants interviewed him, and Deion was like, "What pick are you guys have?" And they were like 14th. And he's like, "I'm not going to be there that long." So you have guys that knew that they were going to go at the top and knew that they were going to go in the first four. And then you have guys that are like, no, I'm not going to go to you. You're not going to have a choice. Am I wrong in that? I mean, can these guys pick where they go?
The media, and I hate doing this as a media guy, making this, but the media likes to create those storylines talking about it. And a great example of that was the Joe Burrow thing. There was some media members that created this saga that he didn't want to play in Cincinnati, that he was going to pull an Eli, and so on. And like Josh says, right on cue, Eli picked where he went 20 years ago. Elway, about 40 years ago? Is this going to be, an every 20 years thing? But they were bringing this up that Joe Burrow was going to do this. And finally at the combine, they asked Joe Burrow, they're like, is that true? And he goes, no, like I'll play wherever they want me to go. And I don't know how often the USC media gets in front of Caleb Williams. And also for them, though, they're asking him questions in USC realm. Like, they don't care at that point. They don't care about what the Chicago Bears fans are thinking, nor would I if I was in that scenario. Because at that point, they're asking him about USC plays whoever the heck they're playing this week. I have no idea. That's who they're asking about. Or they're asking him what the heck happened against Notre Dame a couple of days ago that caused you to lose and me to lose money because I was confident in betting USC. I've never been more confident in a line when I saw it immediately come out than picking USC plus 2.5. And I've never been more wrong because USC crapped the bed. It was awful.
Can you imagine if Elway would have played baseball?
Maybe Caleb Williams decides to play baseball. Listen, crazier things have happened, but I think it'll be interesting to see. There's no question about that. But yeah, how about we hop on and how about we cue the music? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's good.
We're gonna cue the music for everyone's favorite segment. Leroy.
Are you gonna do Leroy's Lobin before we do the our four quarters?
Yeah, that's how we've been doing it. That's how we've been doing it the past couple weeks because then it's a good separation. Yep. Leroy's logos. If you never played, I have 3 logos for Leroy from college teams. If you'd like to play along in the comments, you can just guess which team this college is. And then also we have a theme between the said comments. Last week, Leroy had one of his best weeks. 3 out of 4. The only one he missed was Missouri State. If you remember, he was able to pull it out 3 of 4. But because of that, Leroy is now hitting, if my computer will load, it will tell us that he's hitting 408. That average is continuing to drop higher and higher. So Leroy, would you like door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3 to open up? 3. He pops off and hits 3. This is your first logo.
That is Maine, University of Maine.
That is Maine. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
How did you know that?
They played WKU like 3 years ago.
They did. They did.
That's why I remember that logo, only because of that.
Interesting. Josh guessed Montana State. That was incorrect.
They beat WKU too, if I remember right.
They did. No, you are 100% correct in saying that. Well, interesting. Leroy gets that one. Would you like 1 or 2 now? 2.
I hate the single letter ones, man.
2. Ooh, wow, the comments section has got it. And it's not John Malone's guess. Sorry, he's not correct in this one.
The big D's. All right, I'm going to go with Dartmouth.
Dartmouth, is that your final answer?
Yes. Oh!
I knew I was too easy again. Oh my goodness!
Part of me wanted to say Duquesne, but I knew that I didn't think that was right. So.
The Dartmouth Big Green, and now your final one, Leroy. It is the alma mater of the Brown family. Both Mick and Josh pulled that one out too. Leroy's not looking at the comments. At least he says he's not.
I'm not. Nope. I don't look at the comments, my friend.
Will Leroy go 3 out of 3 on logos? For what would be only the second time ever. Leroy, what is this one?
He's not. Southern Miss? I'm going to go with Southern Miss.
That is correct. The Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Oh my goodness. A blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. I got to take it off the screen now. How does it go away? Go away. Go away. Okay, Leroy. What is the theme? Will you go 4 out of 4 for the first time ever?
Southern Miss, Maine, and Dartmouth.
What is the theme between these schools?
Southern Miss, Maine, and
That would be a solid theme, John, but then I would not, because sometimes I throw some in there. And did they all play WKU? Technically, 2 of them did. Southern Miss and Maine did, but I don't know that Dartmouth has. Potentially, though.
I don't got the theme, my friend. What you got?
You don't have theme?
All teams east of the Mississippi River.
I guess
I don't know where Dartmouth is.
Dartmouth's in the Northeast. So technically you are like that is correct, but that is not the theme that we were looking for.
That's fine.
The theme is we have the Golden Eagles,
okay,
the Big Green, and the Black Bears. All 3 teams have colors in their nicknames. All 3 teams have colors in their nicknames.
Nope, never would have got that.
Taysom Hill just scored a touchdown. It's 24-16 Jags, supposedly. How about a little play clock segment here? As we'll throw up our play clock here. And this is a segment where Leroy and I have both come up with 2 questions each. We have 40 seconds to answer the question. We have no idea what the other person is going to ask. But it can be anything. Sports related, life related, whatever it might be. So Leroy, do you want to ask or answer first?
I will answer first, my friend.
All righty. We have decided the NFL calls you today and says, Leroy, you are to create. You have as much money as you want, but you are creating the ideal Super Bowl broadcast team this year. You need a play-by-play announcer. You need a color analyst. You need a sideline reporter, and you need a studio team. So that would mean like College Game Day, the Fox Big Noon Sunday, Fox's NFL Sunday night, all of those. So you have to choose 4. So a play-by-play guy, a color analyst, a sideline reporter, and a studio team. They could be from all different networks, so you're creating your own. What's your team?
Right. Al
This
Michaels
is the Super Bowl.
Al Michaels for play-by-play. Tony Romo for color. Okay, Michelle Tafoya for sideline reporter. And Fox for the broadcast, for the production team. Who am I missing?
Your studio team.
Yeah, Fox. Fox is my
so
studio team.
Which one?
NFL Game Day, Fox. NFL Game Day.
Does that mean I got to listen to Terry Bradshaw?
We've had this discussion before. See,
but okay. Terry Bradshaw is the worst.
I get it, but the thing is you watch the Bengals, who are an AFC team. Primarily, you grew up with the CBS broadcast. That's just the way it was. The
but
Bengals
Boomer is listen. It means I have to listen to Bill Cowher, and I can't stand listening to Bill Cowher. But Boomer beats all of them. Phil Simms is a Kentuckian, beats all of them. John is upset that you didn't pick ESPN for Booger.
Listen, if I want a guy staring off into space talking about weird football takes, I'll call Booger, all right?
You could just have us on this show as well. Okay, I'm ready to answer.
All right. The Contemporary Baseball Era Committee nominees, class of 2024. Cito Gaston, Davey Johnson, Jim Leland, Ed Montague, Hank Peters, my man Lou Piniella, Joe West, and Bill White. Out of those 8, who gets in?
Obviously, Joe West. He's got to be the number one because of everything he did for the city of Chicago. And also he's a great CD of music as well as Cowboy Joe West. No, in all seriousness, I think Leland will get in. I think he deserves it. And I think you could see Lou Piniella get in as well. He led a team to the won the World Series with the Reds. He's been kind of a cantankerous figure too as well over the years. But I think Leland is a given. I think he was always known as one of the better managers, and I just hope he's smoking a heater while doing his acceptance speech, because what else would he do?
Love it. I love it. That's awesome.
Christy asks, do I not like listening to anyone? Do I? It's just like there are right answers and there are wrong answers. It just Terry Bradshaw just drives me crazy. And that's not even necessarily the Steelers part in him. It just like something about, I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Leroy, before the Bengals game on Sunday, we were outside the stadium and we were discussing to make our Mount Rushmore of current NFL wide receivers. So your top 4 NFL wide receivers that are currently in the league. So current. No former players in this. Who is the Mount Rushmore of current NFL wide receivers?
Cooper Kupp. I'm gonna be biased, even though you're gonna shake your head and say no. DJ Moore is probably on there. All right. Justin Jefferson and Chase.
Okay.
Those are my 4 that I'm going with. And again, you know what? And I think you can be kind of a little bit the guy from Detroit. Yeah, he's pretty good too. But those are my 4, and that's what I'm sticking with.
To me, in my opinion, I think that there are, and I know I don't really get to answer this, but I think that there are 3 givens, and John has 3 of them, in my opinion. Jefferson, Chase, Hill.
Yeah,
are 3. Tyreek Hill. And to me, the 4th one, I agreed with Cooper Kupp. But I think the 4th one, you can make an argument for a bunch of different guys. But it was kind of an interesting discussion. One of the guys that we were with was a Seahawks fan, was trying to argue DK Metcalf. And I was like, don't get me wrong, DK Metcalf's a great wide receiver. He's not in that tier, though. And see, I'm fine with mix here. Jefferson, Chase, Hill, AJ Brown. Like, I feel like the top 3 are your top 3, but that 4th one kind of changes by the week. 2 weeks ago, DJ Moore probably was in that conversation. Okay, I'm ready.
A formerly known as Twitter, an X update, said, quote, I don't know if Kentucky football will ever win the games that they should win in order to have the record we all know they should have. This is a 10-2 or 11-1 team on paper. The coaching and the execution is that of a 7-5 or 8-4 team. Ridiculously frustrating. True or not?
So who said this?
A Twitter update from a guy named Kentucky Update.
For one, I have no idea who the hell that is.
You don't have to.
I think the 11-win team thing is strong. Now, without question, Kentucky has had a lot of bad mistakes. And it's a lot of just undisciplined stuff, which as a fan is the most frustrating thing, because you're seeing, late hits. It's like, I know I always talk about it with my color analyst during football games. It's like there are 2 different types of penalties. There are the penalties that sometimes happen, and then there are the penalties that should never happen because you can control them. Late hits, blindside blocks, and so on is the realm of can't happen. In Kentucky, way too many of those. Like, a hold happens sometimes, Sometimes it happens. Heck, even sometimes you false start. It happens. But late hits, just driving.
Taylorville had a player that had a false start 3 out of 4 plays in a row. And on the third time when he came, like they pulled him off the field, right? You just see him looking up and just he knew it. He knew it coming off the field, but it's just one of those things where it's like
he's almost got like the false start yips or something.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where you feel at the high school level, especially, you feel bad for the kid because everyone's just staring right at you,
And it's not your job to crap on the kid either.
No.
Because then mom will be calling you the next morning.
You will absolutely get a phone call, 100%.
Oh, yes. Without question. Along with that. Are you ready for your drivers, Leroy?
I am ready for my drivers, actually. We're all set.
Why don't you fire us up for how this segment works?
So here's how this segment works. I'm going to give Sam a driver. They are either going to be an F1, IndyCar, or NASCAR. All Sam has to do is tell me. He doesn't even need to tell me the name of the driver. He just has to tell me what series the driver drives in. If he can do that, he wins.
Easy enough. Okay. Oh, I got to put this guy up on the screen here. Let's see if I can't do it. Okay. I got to turn off the comments here. Okay. Comments are off on my end. Apparently he's sponsored by Krispy Kreme. I've never seen that guy in my life. Formula One.
That final answer?
Yep.
I don't got the cool dings or the buzzers, but ding, you got it right, my friend.
Look at that. I could. Where is he from?
He is.
Is he British?
Bristol, United Kingdom. So he's English.
Yeah, I was gonna say he looks kind of English, and I can say that as somebody that is English.
His name is Lando Norris. He drives for McLaren.
Look at that. John and I have both gone 1 for 1 here and getting this. Okay, what in the world?
There is driver number 2 for you.
He's a chunky boy. Usually, I mean, that's the thing. You don't see a lot of chunky drivers. Ryan Newman's one of the only ones I can think of. I mean, like in all seriousness, like in NASCAR, who are the NASCAR like none of them are chunky dudes. But then I can't think that he's an IndyCar driver for that reason. Because can he fit in the car?
You can't really be a chunky driver to drive IndyCar?
No, because it's a tight fit. But I'm going to guess I'm going to guess that he's an IndyCar driver.
Is that your final answer?
Sure.
No, that is Valtteri Bottas, who is a F1 driver. F1, he is an F1 driver.
I should have gone with a guess. Mick guessed NASCAR. John Malone was with me and guessing Indy. Paul Reeves decided he'd rather go to the fair than listen to our podcast.
I get it.
My goodness. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how I feel about you now pulling out like bow tie pictures. Like
no, because you kept I look at the Mercedes
sponsors, yeah.
So
this guy, for one, no NASCAR driver would ever be caught wearing a bow tie. like without question. So he's got to be an IndyCar driver.
Is that your final answer?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, would a NASCAR driver ever be caught? Apparently Christy knows this guy.
Oh, Christy knows him. Yeah, absolutely. That is Marcus Ericsson. He won last year's Indy 500. He was the Indy 500 winner for last year. So, yeah. You got 2 out of 3 though. Pretty good, man.
Listen, I've been rolling here. How about we jump into some? What's that?
You actually have. In fact, you've only missed. I started keeping track on September 13th. So since September 13th, you've missed 3. 3, 6, 9, 12. 3 out of 15. So you got 12 out of 15. That's pretty good, man.
John is correct too.
John, you weren't even here for that, you jerk.
Paul and I are still scarred.
Yeah,
still scarred. That's why Paul isn't watching tonight, because he's so scarred from what you showed us that one time like 3 months ago. How about some picks? John says he was here that day. How about some picks for the week? as we jump into the picks of the week, how this is each week Leroy and I will have the opportunity to get up to 10 points. This week, though, only 8. What we'll do is every week we will pick the other person's high school game that they're broadcasting. So I'll pick the Taylorville game. Leroy will pick the Grayson County game. We'll both pick the Kentucky and Northwestern game and the Western Kentucky game. We'll both pick the Bengals game. We'll both pick the Bears game. And then Leroy and I will both pick 2 games that the other person doesn't know that we are picking. So only 8 points this week because the Bengals don't play this week and the Cats don't play this week. So instead, we open it up, Leroy, with your game, Taylorville. What do they got?
Oh, it's a big, big week for Taylorville Tornado football. The 4-4 Taylorville Tornadoes head to Civic Memorial to take on the Eagles out of Bethalto. That's right. The high school is called Civic Memorial, but they play in the city of Bethalto because we have to be confusing with that. Taylorville sits at 4-4. Civic Memorial sits at 2-6. If Taylorville wins, most likely they're in the playoffs. If they lose, their season is done. So, who is going to pick up the win? The 4-4 Taylorville Tornadoes or the 2-6 Civic Memorial Eagles?
Ooh. Is this a rivalry game? I know I'm not really allowed to ask questions, but is it rivalry or not?
Not necessarily a rivalry game. However, the teams have played each other since I've lived here. So, I mean, the last 4 years they've played each other. Civic won the first 2. I'll even tell you, Civic won the first 2 years by a lot. They got their butts kicked last year.
I'm picking Taylorville. I'm going to say you're going to the playoffs. Playoffs? Which I do say, Grayson County does find out that they're playing Iroquois in the playoffs. So I did just find that out. Breaking news. Not that anybody that watching cares, but
it's crazy because my general manager does not want Taylorville to make the playoffs because it's a bunch of extra work for her.
Oh yeah.
But the owner absolutely does because he already sold all the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little bit of a clash between ownership over whether or not they want them to win or not.
Now, Leroy, you might not have a big rivalry game, but this one, Grayson County has a big rivalry game as they travel north of the dam, as it's the Grayson County Cougars at the Breckenridge County Fighting Tigers. They're not just the Tigers, they're the Fighting Tigers in a big rivalry game happening in Harned, Kentucky, north of the dam. Grayson County at 7-1, Breckenridge County at 3-5. You got the Cougs or the Tigers?
Listen, every time I go against Grayson County, they win. I can't do it anymore. I just can't. I got to go with the Cougs. Go Grayson County.
Grayson County is Leroy's pick this week in the massive rivalry game there between Grayson County and Breckenridge County. Moving on to the next games, I guess I pick first now in this one. Northwestern travels to Nebraska. Leroy,
The real NU. This is such a big game.
You might remember a couple of weeks ago, Leroy, I made a comment saying I will never pick Nebraska because they always let me down. And Nebraska ended up winning that game. Now, I know better than to pick Northwestern, so I'm picking Nebraska.
Okay. All right.
This might be the only team I pick pick in favor of.
It's interesting because Nebraska just doesn't play well. Okay, so Nebraska, long story short, Nebraska absolutely crushed Northwestern in a bowl game long before Nebraska was ever in the conference. Since then, the two teams have been pretty even, winning back and forth. In fact, last year, Northwestern's only win came against Nebraska overseas when they played in Ireland. So the two teams, whether or not they call it a rivalry or not, have kind of developed a little bit of a rivalry over the real NU. Both schools claiming NU, despite a lot of people referring to Northwestern as NW. Northwestern fans absolutely hate it. So I'm going to go with Northwestern as their backup quarterback in. I got to go with Nebraska. Ugh.
Dang, I didn't even know that. That would have really solidified my pick. So what was your pick again?
I'll go with Nebraska.
Leroy is picking Nebraska because then you're not disappointed no matter what happens, right?
Exactly. See, Christy, Sam knows. That's what I do.
That's what you do. I'm trying to figure. I got to find. One of the games that I was picking, I forgot the team that I was going to pick. Okay. Now I'm good here. We're good. Okay. Leroy, on Tuesday night, the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers host the Flames of Liberty.
I
Another
don't like these
Tuesday night
Tuesday
football.
games, man.
So we've got to wait almost a week until our picks are finalized. So Leroy, are you going with the Flames or the Tops?
Okay, so Western really needs this game to stay in the hunt for the Conference USA Championship. Because I think Liberty's sitting in first place right now. I think WKU's in second.
You are correct.
With that being said, I just don't see WKU having enough to get them. I got to reluctantly go with Liberty.
Dang. I was hoping that was going to be one that I was going to get on you. I'm picking Liberty as well, going against the Tops, and
I tell you what, if
Liberty.
they would have beat Jackson State, I probably would have gone with WKU. I really think that loss to Jackson State is what kind of changed my mind on it.
Yeah, Jacksonville State, not the Jacksonville State.
Sorry.
Big one happening in the city of Chi-Town, Chicago this weekend, as the Chicago Bears host the, I was almost going to say Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. I guess I picked first, and I learned my lesson last week. Picking the Raiders.
Well, seeing as how Justin Fields isn't playing and Tyson Bagent is, I gotta go with the Raiders too. I will say, and I want this on the record for this, is Raiders fans have been talking a whole lot all week long about the Raiders crushing Chicago. Now, again, if Justin Fields was playing, we might have a different story, but Bagent's in. I just don't trust Bagent, but I will laugh hysterically if the Bears pull it off, but I'll go with the Raiders.
Alrighty, my first pick of games, the 1-5 Charlotte 49ers travel to face the 1-5 East Carolina Pirates. A battle between 1-5 AAC teams. Leroy, Charlotte or East Carolina? Who you got?
Why do you do this to me, man?
I got to get my points somehow.
Where's the game at?
East Carolina. Both teams 1-5.
I'll go with Charlotte.
Good. I'm picking East Carolina. So there we go. We at least separate. Leroy, what's your first game?
My pick. See, and I went the complete opposite. Number 7, Penn State heads to Ohio to take on the Buckeyes, who are sitting at number 3 right now. Number 7, Penn State versus number 3, Ohio. That game's at noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central on Saturday, October 21st. Who you got, Sam? Or do I have to pick first?
No, I pick first.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, neither one of these teams is good. And that's not Big Ten hate. That's legitimate.
Oh, yes, it is.
I don't think Ohio State is good. I really don't think that they're that good based on the quarterback position. I don't think they have a great quarterback, and because of that, I wouldn't pick them in a playoff for that reason. And then Penn State hadn't played anybody. Congratulations, you beat UMass by 100. I think me and you could beat UMass by 100. Since the game is at Ohio State, I'm going to go with the Buckeyes, but nothing would surprise me in this. Who you got?
As much as I want to say Penn State, I can't do it. I got to go with Ohio State too.
So congrats to Penn State for winning the game.
Again, I would tend to agree with you on the fact that I think Ohio State is a little worse than number 3. And I don't necessarily know if Penn State deserves that number 7 either, just based off of the teams that they played. I mean, Penn State struggled with Northwestern for the whole first half before they were able to kind of pull away in the third quarter in a game that was probably much closer than what the score actually showed. But it is interesting to see Penn State, again, another team that's been talking a whole lot coming into this week, coming in to play Ohio State. Interesting.
Big game happening as well. We're going to take it down to Arkansas, Leroy, as the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, the record of 3-3, travel to face the 3-3 Arkansas State Red Wolves. Who you got? Now, are you over there looking up information? That's kind of cheating.
My hands are right here.
Okay.
My hands are right here.
Coastal Carolina at Arkansas State. Who you got? Both teams 3-3.
Arkansas State.
Thank you. I'll pick Coastal Carolina. Because Chanticleers is fun to say.
All right. You ready for the next one?
Yep.
The Super Bowl champions, because their fans have already declared themselves to be Super Bowl champion, Detroit Lions, head into Baltimore. I would say act like you've been there before, but they haven't, so they don't know how to act. Take out the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay, you know what, Mr. Bears fan? Yes, I realize the Bears have had some success in the last 20 years, but it's not like you could talk about like Mr.
Don't you start with me, Mr. Bengals fan, who's...
Let's be... Hey. When's the last time your team was in the Super Bowl?
Yeah. And we had the same results you had in the Super Bowl. A whole lot of nothing.
Now, that's a low blow. It's still... That wound is still fresh.
I'm just saying, the Lions fans have been talking a whole lot for a team that before
Let
this
them
year...
enjoy it.
No.
Where is this game?
It is in Baltimore. It's at noon on Fox. And listen, let me be clear here before I get labeled a hater on this one. I grew up in Michigan for I lived in Michigan for 3 years. I remember growing up, my dad and my uncle trying to use the old antenna to try to get the Lions-Bears games from Thanksgiving. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Lions. I really do. I really hope that they go far, but there's about 7 or 8 fans that tend to forget that their team hasn't done anything in the last 40, 50 years. So that was why I said the comment that I made. But yes, Baltimore takes on Detroit in what should be a pretty good game, actually, I think.
That'll probably be one that I actually will watch. That'll be one of the games that I'll watch on Sunday, since I don't have a Bengals game to go with. John's picking the Lions. Mick is picking the Ravens. I want the Lions to win, because I don't want the Ravens to win, but I think the Ravens will win since it's in Baltimore. So I'm going AFC North. Will you go with your NFC North?
I will, and I'm going to take Detroit. I'm going to take Detroit off a last second, and obviously no extra points on this, but I'm going to take Lions off a last second field goal. I think the team that has the ball last is the team that's going to win. So I'm going to go with Detroit.
All right, so we do differ as it goes along. To recap the picks for the week, Leroy's picking Grayson County to beat Breckenridge County, which Leroy was probably the right pick. I am picking Taylorville to beat Civic Memorial. Was it the right pick?
It better be the right pick. Let's just say that one right now.
Northwestern and Nebraska, we're both picking Nebraska. We're both picking Liberty to beat our Hilltoppers. We're both picking the Raiders to beat the Bears. And now we start to separate. I'm picking East Carolina over Charlotte. Leroy's picking the 49ers. You do realize it's the Charlotte 49ers and not the San Francisco 49ers, right?
Yes, but okay. I still think Charlotte can hold off and pull off a win.
I'm picking Coastal Carolina to beat Arkansas State. Leroy's picking Arkansas State. We're both with Ohio State to beat Penn State. And the Lions is who Leroy is going with. I am picking the Ravens. And this, Leroy, you could make up quite a bit of ground this week, because we're different on quite a few, and I think a couple of those, you could be very right on. You never know. Or maybe Grayson County will let you down, and you finally pick them, and they're going to lose.
Sam's just going to block me everywhere. Like, nope, you're done. You're done.
Well, finally you picked a Bengals game right, and you picked the Bengals, so at least that is done, because I don't know what I would have done if they would have lost. I might have we wouldn't be picking their games anymore, because then you would have been 0-6 and picking their games.
I just remember watching the first 5 minutes of the Bears-Lions or the Bears-Vikings game and going, why do I subject myself to this every single week? Why do I do this to myself? Yet here I am watching the whole thing.
John, there's no shot the Ravens are in the Super Bowl. None. No. Not making the Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson will choke. He always does when the moment gets big.
Not wrong.
You heard it here first. Any closing thoughts?
Michigan Wolverines in trouble for stealing signs, apparently. That was the big story that broke today. We don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it, but it just cracked me up that there's a lot of people that say that this is all Ryan Day doing things from Ohio State, trying to get Jim Harbaugh in trouble. But it's like the NCAA couldn't get him on the hamburger scandal, so now they're going after him for stealing signs. But somebody commented and said, who have they played? What signs are they stealing? I mean, Michigan hasn't played like anybody.
Well, it's like a couple of years ago in 2019 when the Bengals were awful. When the Patriots got in trouble for filming the Bengals sideline with the cameras. And it was kind of like everyone was like, of all teams you picked to do this, it's at that point, the 1-11 Bengals. That's the team you're doing this to. And that's always what it's wild to me is you never get a team like Northwestern who does this. Like a team that actually might need it. Like it's always the Patriots. It's Michigan. It's always the big guys. Like what? Why isn't it? Or maybe Northwestern's doing it and they're just not good enough to get caught. But it's wild to me that it's always the good teams. Like Michigan doesn't need any help. They're a really good team.
Michigan's beat Indiana, Minnesota, Nebraska, Rutgers, Bowling Green, and UNLV.
Again, the Big Ten.
And East Carolina.
And I don't disagree with what Mick was saying here. Patriots probably film the other teams. They just happen to get caught filming the Bengals. But still, it's more just hilarious that they get caught filming the one and however what the Bengals record was. And that maybe the big guys are big guys due to the cheating.
I just wonder how much more Jim Harbaugh is going to take before he just goes. And I'm telling you, and I know I'm a long shot at this, but I just wonder if that Bears job. Listen, Jim Harbaugh used to be a quarterback for the Bears a long time ago. He was a quarterback for the Bears, Colts, a couple other teams. I just wonder if he's looking at that Bears position going.
How would that make you feel?
I'd be all right with it. I don't have an issue with Jim Harbaugh. I think he's a decent coach. I just wonder if he's happy with college or if he's tired of just the constant NCAA BS and all the other stuff like that. Just things that go in my mind and topics that get talked about. But I'm interested to see where this goes from here and whether or not there is any fire or any sparks that come from maybe Harbaugh saying, you know what, enough is enough on this.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch, and luckily, plenty of time to converse about NFL head coach vacancies and so on. We'll be back Wednesday, normal time next week. Talking. Who knows what the topics could be about? Probably a lot more about the NFL or the MLB playoffs. You never know what could happen this weekend in the NFL. You never know what could potentially come up on next week's show of From the Pressbox. Remember to follow us on our Facebook page. You can subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, or we're also on Spotify. For all of the different ways that we have to make sure that you don't miss any of our coverage, because obviously we bring you the best analysis that you could potentially find.
100%. Nowhere else.
And I mean, our picks are clearly nailing it. I mean, me below 70%, Leroy, you're hovering around 50. We're clearly killing it over here. So good job. High five. Nice job. Great job. Good team. Perfect. We'll be back Wednesday, though, for another edition of the show. Leroy, it's been fun as always.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Appreciate all your well wishes, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week on another edition of Raven Stan. At the last second, wanted to let you know he's sorry he couldn't make it. Well,
and think about what you did, young man.
He says he can't make it, and Paul Reeves is at the fair. Some people's priorities not in the right line. We'll see you next week.